less domination.
Alright fellas, now I have to show this to you so that you can get the context of the reason for this build and why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it. And so without further ado, let's get to it. Also, as another mention, I want to say that this build does not use your first ability at all. You might use it to get, your first couple of stacks. You can just passively gain income without using your first ability. And in all of the clips, you won't see me use my first ability. I'll even show you a clip later on in this video where I go from 60 to 100 in literally a split second without my first ability. That's just purely passive income from the ultimate and crowd control, which is absolute bonkers.
However, for endurance, he's not necessarily the best. Sure, he's undying with his passive, with stacks fairly easily to come by. However, you reach a point similar to Inaros, where any instance of damage will one-shot you. For up until around levels 2000 to 3000, you're unstoppable. But as levels scale, it just becomes more of a stacking simulator and less domination. Love me some Nidus, but for endurance, unfortunately, he's D tier.
I have a bet that I will finish this game with 0 deaths.
Alright, now that you've seen what this build can do, I want to go over his abilities, because we will be swapping out his lava with Ensnare. Ensnare is just better in so many ways, apart from you cannot just cast it wherever you want. It has, you have to exclusively choose an enemy to cast the ability, but that's about the only downside to the ability. When it comes to builds, I have two of them. The regular Ensnare, which I used on the clips, which is fine as an all-around build, but honestly doesn't work that well in endurance, because I found that strength doesn't really benefit you in the long run. Let me go over why. Now, strength with growing power is amazing if you're playing casual Nidus in a normal mission. Your link can benefit with an enemy, it can benefit yourself with damage redirection. It can benefit your fourth ability's healing, so you can work as a semi-healer. It can work on your Virulence's damage, which is also very, very great. But that's about it. When it comes to endurance, you're not really playing for either of these three abilities. You're playing for the crowd control and your ultimate, which let me get to in a minute. You're not gonna need that much strength, and so I came up with this build right after the game, which focuses more on range and having that insanely long CC range. And well, a larger CC area means when I'm going with this, you're not gonna die as easily. It even pulls heavy gunners. I believe the range on the heavy gunners is less than 26 meters, So you're welcome. You won't die with ENSNARE anymore. Now, let me go over the mods. Natural talent with rolling guard is just extra survivability. Less time spent casting your spells, more time spent on your ass, on your feet. Great. Speaking of asses, less time spent on your ass, more time spent on your feet means more DPS. Prime sure-footed is a must. Now, as an aura mod, you can go whatever you want. Really, I went with Stealth Charge because I felt like it. Stretch, overextended, Argo Ridge, all the range. Really, this build is so troll, but works so well at the same time. You won't ever see a build like this. Prime Flow with 100 Adrenaline for that energy pool going. Now, let me tell you this. You don't have any health on this build, correct? You don't have any ammo. And if you do go indefinite, you will encounter infinitely scaling enemies that will eventually one-shot you, regardless of how much armor or damage reduction you have. Hence why the build follow up to my old Nidus build, which got his ass kicked after level 800. Only 800. This one was able to go 9000. My tank wasn't able to pull above 800 without constantly dying and running out of reses, because you just cannot keep up. You had no CC, you couldn't spam your first ability because you didn't have 100 adrenaline, and since you will be dying with this build constantly, the 100 adrenaline guarantees you energy upon resurrection. I don't even know if I should call it that. You cannot die with this build. And now, constant energy means that you can spam your second ability, which means infinite crowd control, which means you will die less. And you just keep doing this over and over. And you might be asking yourselves, how are you able to pull yourself that long without spamming your one? Now, just because something is intended to work one way doesn't mean you shouldn't look the other way. And this is exactly what we're doing with this build. Let me explain how his fourth ability works. Now, every maggot latches onto an enemy and stunlocks them, well, not stunlocks them, but staggers them until A, the maggot runs out, or B, the enemy actually dies. Now, once either of those conditions have been met, or you used your virulence on the maggot will explode, dealing a small explosion that does scale with your range, hence why we have so much range in this build. And for every enemy hit by one maggot, for every enemy hit by a maggot counts as 1/5 of a stack. Say you have 5 maggots and 20 enemies pulled into one spot, these 5 maggots will explode, getting you 20 stacks. Because how many times does 5 go up in 20? That's 4 times. 5 maggots times 4, that's 20 stacks. Which is honestly insane because you're not doing anything for it. You're just grouping them up above your ultimate and killing them with your melee. Absolutely bonkers, I'm telling you. Now, as for arcanes, I'm running Avenger because it's the absolute best rune arcane to run a Nidus if you're a red crit whale like me, because I just cannot play without the red crits. Now, must crit in this game is multiplicative, meaning it adds a percentage of your base crit on that given weapon. This one is straight up flat crit added onto your weapon. Actually, it counts as a buff, so regardless of what weapon you're using, you're gonna get the crit. Now, as a second arcane, I've got Fury, because I'm a melee guy, alright? Hence the Stealth Charge. Fury gives 180 multiplicative damage to your weapon. It takes the total damage and multiplies it by 1.8. It's about as best as I can get for melee. You can count on that one. Now, as for your operator, we had to, cover her or him as well. I'm using MAGUS anomaly on now, which pulls enemies within 30 meters towards you. Now, not to get confused with ENSNARE, because ENSNARE anchors one enemy and pulls the rest to that one enemy. But with our MAGUS anomaly, you can pull all the enemies to your desired spot. Not only that, but when you anchor different enemies, that new anchor is not going to pull already anchored enemies. It's not going to pull already pulled enemies. It's going to create a new hub for itself. And so MAGUS Anomaly comes in handy right there, because it can help you pull both of the groups into one group, further funneling them into a big massacre of gas clouds, as you see in the clip. Which, speaking of, it's also great for pulling enemies continuously into the gas clouds, taking more damage over time. It's an absolutely amazing arcane. But if you want, you can run whatever you want. Honestly, I just find myself comfortable with MAGUS Anomaly, but that's about it. Now, I know you'll ask, what are you running for as a tree, right? As a focus tree. I'm glad you asked. I'm running Naramon. You can run pretty much anything, but Naramon gives you this infinite combo count on your melee, which if you will be playing with melee, as I do, you need the infinite combo. You cannot be running around with zero combo. That's just not gonna cut it. It won't. And that's just the truth. Especially if you'll be playing with Vertilac, which, oh my goodness. It's not a basic attack weapon. It's a heavy block attack weapon for the projectile. Meaning you won't be going around farming for the combo constantly, time on end. It's not a Cronen Prime. If it was a Cronen Prime, you could get away with it, because with Cronen Prime you're constantly meleeing and therefore upkeeping your combo count. But with Vertilac, you're not. Alright, the projectile does not count as a combo addition. It just doesn't. It's a whole thing for itself. And yeah, that's what I'm running with as a focus tree. And yeah, that's the build in general. You have the idea of it. You know what to do. You know how it plays off. It's just a big part of you pulling enemies into your ultimate, playing around your ultimate, letting the maggots stack onto enemies, not running away into the abyss and not coming back just like my father did. You have to group them up, and you have to do so above your ultimate. This video took a shit ton of time to make, but as you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about Nidus, clearly, given I've made 2 videos on him so far. I just had to make him work. I couldn't get my ass kicked, and I couldn't have people like this guy going around telling people that Nidus is useless in endurance, because it just isn't. And this build just proves how good he is, regardless of the situation you're in. And yeah, I just had to make Nidus work. I did. That's me signing off. Take care and stay safe. Guys, if you did make it this far, I want to thank all of you. And obviously, no hate towards Lifewater. This guy's cool. He's got some good points. There is no one set way to play something. There are multiple ways to play stuff, and that's the beauty of Warframe. And if you are looking for a Vertilac build, just as this video, do consider checking out 9frame if you haven't already. He's an amazing content creator in with Warframe, and he makes a lot of cool builds with a big variety of weapons. Go check them both out, and thanks again for sticking around. I wish you well. Take care.